The translator had been broken for 3 days when Private Bren first heard a human laugh. He did not know what the sound meant. In his training, he had learned that conquered species made many noises. Screaming meant fear. Silence meant submission. But this sound was different. It came from a small creature with only 2 arms and soft skin. A child. Bren had been part of the Dravani Empire's greatest fleet. His people had conquered 847 species across 3 galaxies. The method was always the same: arrive with overwhelming force, destroy any resistance, break the spirit of the population, move to the next world. Earth was supposed to be easy. The humans had primitive technology. Their weapons could not scratch Dravani armor. Their ships were slow and weak. The invasion lasted only 6 hours before every major city surrendered. That was 3 months ago. Now Bren stood in a small town assigned to patrol duty. His job was simple: walk through the streets, show the humans that the Dravani were watching, keep them afraid. But the humans did not seem afraid. The child who laughed was playing with a ball in the street. When she saw Bren, she did not run. She did not scream. She stopped her game and looked at him with wide eyes full of something he could not name. Then she smiled. Bren had never seen a smile before. His species did not have the facial muscles for it. He did not know what it meant, but something about it made his chest feel strange. The child picked up her ball and walked toward him. Bren's training told him to raise his weapon. Conquered species were dangerous. They could hide bombs. They could carry disease. Trust nothing. But she was so small. She stopped in front of him and held up the ball. She spoke words he could not understand. His translator was still broken, but her meaning was clear. She wanted him to play. Bren stood frozen. In 200 years of conquest, no member of a defeated species had ever asked a Dravani soldier to play. They begged for mercy. They offered bribes. They attacked in desperate suicide missions, but they never smiled. They never offered games. An old woman appeared in a doorway. The child's grandmother, Bren guessed. He expected her to grab the child and run. He expected fear. Instead, the old woman walked slowly toward them. She looked at Bren's armor, his weapons, his 4 arms built for killing. Then she looked at his face. She spoke to the child. The child nodded and ran back to the house. Bren thought the moment was over. He thought the old woman had finally shown the proper fear. But the child returned with something in her hands: food, a piece of bread still warm. She held it up to Bren. His people did not need to eat often. Their bodies were efficient. But he had not eaten in 2 days, and the smell of the bread reached him through his helmet filters. The child waited. The old woman watched. Bren knew the rules. Do not accept anything from conquered species. Do not show weakness. Do not interact beyond necessary commands. But the bread smelled so good, and the child's smile had not faded. Slowly Bren removed his helmet. The old woman's eyes widened slightly when she saw his face. Gray skin, 4 eyes, a mouth full of sharp teeth. He was a monster to them. But the child did not flinch. She simply held the bread higher. Bren took it. The taste was unlike anything in his memory. Soft, warm, made with care by hands that had no reason to care for him. He ate it all. The child laughed again, that strange and beautiful sound. She said something to her grandmother. The old woman nodded and spoke to Bren. He still could not understand the words, but her tone was gentle. She pointed to her porch. 2 chairs sat there in the shade. She was inviting him to rest. Bren's sergeant would execute him for this. Sitting with conquered species, accepting their food, treating them as anything other than subjects to be controlled. But his sergeant was not here, and his feet were tired. And something inside him, something he had never felt before, wanted to stay near these strange creatures who smiled at monsters. He sat. The old woman brought him water. The child sat on the ground near his feet and played with her ball. Nobody spoke because they could not understand each other, but somehow that did not matter. For 1 hour, Bren was not a soldier of the Empire. He was just a tired being, resting in the shade, watching a child play. When he finally stood to leave, the child ran to him. She hugged his leg. Her small arms could barely reach around his armored limb. Bren did not know what a hug was. His species did not touch except in combat. But he understood that this was something precious. He walked back to his base in silence. His report said nothing unusual had occurred. He told no one about the bread or the smile or the hug. But that night, lying in his bunk, Bren realized something had changed inside him. He had conquered hundreds of worlds. He had killed without mercy. He had believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. But a child with a ball had defeated him completely. And he did not mind at all. In the following weeks, Bren began to hope his translator would stay broken forever, because as long as he could not understand orders, he could pretend he did not hear them. And he could keep visiting the old woman's porch. Counselor Nivan had studied the psychology of defeated species for 60 years. She knew every pattern of trauma. She knew how long it took to break a population. She knew the signs of rebellion before they appeared. But she had never seen anything like the reports from Earth. The numbers made no sense. Dravani soldiers stationed on Earth had the lowest death rate in the entire military. They had the highest satisfaction scores. They requested to stay on Earth even when offered promotions elsewhere. Most disturbing of all, they stopped killing. Not because they were ordered to stop. The occupation protocols clearly allowed for civilian deaths to maintain order, but Earth-stationed soldiers simply refused to fire on unarmed humans. Nivan had been sent to find the disease and cure it. She arrived on Earth 6 months after the invasion. The planet was green and blue and beautiful in ways that made her uncomfortable. Conquered worlds were supposed to be gray. They were supposed to look defeated. Earth looked alive. Her first interview was with a sergeant named Corval. He had served in 43 conquests. He was considered one of the most loyal soldiers in the fleet. He was also refusing to return to duty. Nivan found him in a human settlement helping to repair a damaged building. He wore no armor. He carried no weapon. He was laughing. That laugh stopped Nivan cold. Dravani did not laugh. They had no word for joy in their language. The closest concept was victory, but that was not the same. Corval saw her and walked over. He did not salute. "What has happened to you?" Nivan asked. Corval thought for a long moment. Then he said, "They taught me something." "The humans taught you what?" "How to be happy." Nivan did not understand. Happiness was a weakness. It made soldiers soft. It made empires fall. But Corval did not look weak. He looked stronger than any soldier she had met. His eyes were clear. His movements were calm. He seemed at peace. She spent the next 3 weeks interviewing infected soldiers. Each story was different, but the pattern was the same. A human had shown them kindness. Not strategy, not manipulation, just simple, honest kindness. A shared meal, a word of thanks, a moment of connection. One soldier had been wounded in a training accident. A human doctor had treated him, even though his species was the enemy. She had held his hand while he was in pain. He had never been touched gently before. Another soldier had collapsed from exhaustion during a patrol. A human family had carried him into their home and let him rest in their bed. When he woke, they had prepared food for him. They had given him their own food, even though supplies were limited. A third soldier had been crying alone behind a building. He did not even know why he was crying. A human child had found him. The child did not speak. She just sat with him until he felt better. Then she had given him a flower. Nivan collected these stories with growing unease. The humans were not fighting back with weapons. They were fighting back with something far more dangerous. They were treating their conquerors like people. The Dravani Empire was built on one simple truth. Conquered species were inferior. They existed to serve. They had no value beyond their usefulness. But the humans did not believe this. They looked at Dravani soldiers and saw living beings. Beings who might be tired. Beings who might be lonely. Beings who might need a friend. This was impossible to defend against. Nivan tried to write her report. She tried to recommend solutions, increased discipline, isolation protocols, punishment for any soldier who interacted with humans. But she kept thinking about Corval's laugh. She kept thinking about the soldier who cried and the child who sat with him. She kept thinking about what it might feel like to be treated with kindness by someone who had every reason to hate you. On her last night on Earth, Nivan walked through a human city. She wore no uniform. She wanted to see what the humans saw. A woman bumped into her on the street. Nivan tensed, ready for attack. But the woman just smiled and said, "Sorry about that. Are you okay?" Nivan stared at her. The woman did not know she was Dravani. In the dark, with her hood up, she could pass for a tall human. "Yes," Nivan said, "I am okay." The woman nodded and walked away. Such a small moment, such a simple question. "Are you okay?" No one had ever asked Nivan that question. Not her commanders, not her colleagues, not her family. She stood in the street for a long time, feeling something crack inside her chest. Her final report was supposed to recommend mass executions of contaminated troops. It was supposed to call for stricter control of the human population. Instead, she wrote something else. "The humans have not defeated us with weapons. They have defeated us with something we have no defense against. They have shown us what we could become if we stopped conquering. They have shown us how to be kind. I recommend immediate withdrawal from Earth, not because we cannot hold the planet, we can hold it forever, but because every day we stay, more of us will stop wanting to leave. And I am no longer certain that is a bad thing." Nivan submitted her report and waited for execution. Instead, she received new orders. Stay on Earth, continue observation. And for the first time in 60 years, she smiled. Fleet Commander Sorrel had executed 17 officers for treason in the first year of Earth occupation. By the third year, he stopped counting. The executions did nothing. For every officer he killed, 3 more requested transfer to Earth. For every soldier he punished, 10 more began showing symptoms of contamination. Sorrel had conquered 200 worlds. He had broken species that breathed fire. He had crushed civilizations that lived for thousands of years. Nothing had ever confused him like these soft, weak humans. They should have been the easiest conquest in history. Instead, they were destroying his empire from the inside. The worst part was the music. It started with a single human teaching a Dravani engineer how to play guitar. The engineer had been repairing a damaged power station. The human had watched him work, then offered to show him something. Just one song. That engineer taught another soldier, who taught another. Within 6 months, there were Dravani musicians playing human songs in every occupied city. Sorrel banned music. The soldiers played anyway. He banned dancing. They danced anyway. He banned gatherings between humans and Dravani. They gathered anyway. His army was not rebelling. They still followed combat orders. They still maintained discipline in battle. But they had stopped being soldiers in their hearts. They had become something else, something Sorrel did not have a word for. Friends. He received a report that made his blood freeze. A Dravani patrol had encountered a group of human resistance fighters. The fighters were armed. They were preparing an attack on a supply depot. The patrol should have killed them all. Instead, they talked. The patrol leader, a veteran named Dissa, had asked the humans why they were fighting. The humans explained that their families were hungry. The occupation had disrupted food supplies. They were stealing to survive. Dissa had given them food from her own rations. She had told them where to find more. She had asked them to stop fighting and promised to help. The resistance fighters put down their weapons. They invited Dissa to dinner. Sorrel read this report 5 times. Each time he understood it less. How do you defeat an enemy who invites you to dinner? He decided to see Earth for himself, not from orbit, not from reports. He needed to walk among the humans and understand what was happening to his soldiers. He chose a small coastal town. It had been conquered without resistance. The humans there had simply welcomed the Dravani and continued their lives. Sorrel arrived without announcement. He wore simple armor, no rank markings. He wanted to see the truth. What he saw broke something inside him. Dravani soldiers were everywhere, but they were not patrolling. They were fishing with humans on the beach. They were playing games with human children. They were sitting in human homes, eating human food, listening to human stories. One soldier was holding a human baby. The baby was sleeping against his chest, small fingers wrapped around one of his larger hands. The soldier was crying. Sorrel approached him. "What are you doing?" he demanded. The soldier looked up. He did not seem ashamed. "She would not stop crying," he said. "Her mother was tired. I offered to help." "You are a soldier of the Empire, not a nursemaid." The soldier looked at the sleeping baby. Then he looked at Sorrel with eyes that held no fear. "I am whatever she needs me to be." Sorrel could have executed him on the spot. It was his right. It was his duty. But the baby was so small, and she was sleeping so peacefully. He walked away. That night he sat alone on the beach. The ocean waves sounded like nothing he had ever heard. They were gentle. They were constant. They did not care about empires or conquests. An old human man approached him. The man carried 2 cups of something warm. He offered one to Sorrel. "You look like you need this," the man said. Sorrel took the cup. It was a drink called tea. It was bitter and sweet at the same time. "Why are you not afraid of me?" Sorrel asked. The old man sat beside him on the sand. "Because fear is exhausting," he said, "and you look more tired than dangerous." Sorrel drank the tea. It warmed him in ways he did not expect. "I have destroyed worlds," he said. "I have killed millions." The old man nodded. "I know who you are, Commander. Everyone knows." "Then why give me tea?" "Because you are here, alone in the dark, and no one should be alone in the dark." They sat together until dawn. The old man told Sorrel about his life, his children, his grandchildren, his wife who had died 10 years ago, his hopes and fears and dreams. Sorrel listened. He did not speak. He did not need to. When the sun rose, the old man stood to leave. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Sorrel should have said no. He should have arrested the man. He should have returned to his command and continued the occupation. "Yes," he said, "same time tomorrow." He returned to his ship and looked at the reports on his desk. Treason, contamination, failure. He did not read them. Instead, he sat by his window and watched Earth turn below him. For the first time in 200 conquests, he wondered if losing might not be so bad. Supreme Chancellor Morev had never visited a conquered world. He ruled from the throne room of the Dravani homeworld, surrounded by screens that showed him everything. But screens could not show him what was happening on Earth. His advisors called it an infection. His generals called it a crisis. His priests called it a curse sent by enemy gods. Morev called it impossible. The reports said that 40% of his soldiers had been compromised. They still wore the uniform. They still answered when called, but they would not fight humans anymore. Some had married humans. Some had adopted human children. Some had simply walked away from their posts and started living in human communities, farming land that was not theirs, building homes beside creatures they were supposed to rule. Marev had ruled for 300 years. He had crushed 12 rebellions. He had purged his own family when they showed weakness. He did not understand weakness. He did not tolerate it. He ordered the final solution. 1,000 warships would travel to Earth. They would position themselves in orbit. They would burn the planet clean. Every human, every contaminated soldier, every trace of this disease would be turned to ash. He gave Fleet Admiral Tessani command of the fleet. She was his most loyal officer. She had never failed him. But Tessani had a secret. Her son was stationed on Earth. He had married a human woman. He had a child, a hybrid born of two species. Tessani had seen pictures. The child had 4 eyes like her son, but she had her mother's smile. Tessani did not tell the Chancellor about this. She accepted her orders. She assembled her fleet. She traveled to Earth. The planet filled her view screen. Blue and green and white, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. She opened communications to the surface. All Dravani personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately. Shuttles will launch in 6 hours. Anyone remaining on the surface will be considered a traitor and destroyed with the planet. The responses came slowly at first, then faster, then all at once. No, we will not leave. This is our home now. Thousands of soldiers refused evacuation. They stood with humans in cities and towns and villages. They held hands with the species they had come to conquer. They waited to die together. Tessani looked at the reports. She looked at the names. She found her son among them. Her grandson's name was listed beside his, age 3. She had never met the child. The Chancellor's voice came through her communicator. "Admiral, you have your orders. Begin the bombardment." Tessani's hand moved toward the firing controls. One command, one button, 1 billion lives would end. Her finger touched the surface. She did not press it. "Chancellor," she said, "I need more time. There are complications." "What complications?" Tessani looked at her crew. They were watching her. They were waiting. Many of them had family on Earth too. "Navigation complications," she said. "We need to reposition for optimal firing solutions." The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You have 2 hours." The communication ended. Tessani stood from her command chair. She walked to the main viewport and looked at Earth. Behind her, a young officer spoke. "Admiral, my sister is down there. She has twin daughters." Another voice. "My father refused to evacuate. He says Earth feels like home." Another, "I have never met my nephew. He was born last month." Tessani turned to face her crew. "How many of you have family on that planet?" Slowly hands rose, 1, then 5, then 20, then most of the bridge. She looked at them for a long time. Then she made her choice. "All ships," she announced to the fleet. "This is Admiral Tessani. New orders." She paused. The weight of 300 years of empire pressed against her chest. "Stand down. Power down weapons. All personnel are authorized to request transfer to Earth's surface." The Chancellor's voice exploded through the communicator. "Tessani, what are you doing? I will have you executed." Probably Tessani agreed, but not today. She cut the communication. Around her, the fleet went silent. One ship at a time, weapons powered down. Navigation systems changed course. Shuttles began launching toward the surface. Not to evacuate soldiers. To bring more down. Tessani watched her fleet dissolve. 1,000 warships, the most powerful force in 3 galaxies, defeated by a planet that had never fired a shot. A communication came from the surface, a human voice. "Admiral Tessani, this is the Earth Defense Coalition. We have a message from your son." "Send it." A child's voice filled the bridge. "Grandmother, Daddy says you saved us. Thank you, Grandmother, I love you." Tessani had not cried since she was a child. Dravani did not cry, it was weakness. But she was not sure what Dravani were anymore. Tears fell down her face as she watched her ships descend to Earth like falling stars. The Empire had sent 1,000 warships to destroy humanity. 1,000 warships had chosen humanity instead. And somewhere on the surface, a 3-year-old hybrid girl was waiting to meet her grandmother. Tessani began preparing her shuttle. She had a family to meet. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Dravani extermination fleet had surrendered, not to a superior force, not to advanced weapons. They had surrendered to kindness. Every species the Dravani had conquered heard the story. Every slave world, every broken civilization, every surviving member of the 847 species under Dravani rule. They heard about the humans who shared bread with their enemies. They heard about the soldiers who chose love over orders. They heard about the fleet that refused to fire. And they began to hope. On the Dravani homeworld, Chancellor Marev raged. He ordered more fleets assembled. He demanded loyalty oaths from every officer. He executed anyone who questioned him. But the executions only made things worse. Because now his people knew there was another way. They had seen it on Earth. They had heard it in the stories spreading through the Empire. You did not have to be cruel to be strong. You did not have to hate to survive. You could be kind, and kindness could win. The first rebellion started on a mining world called Pharaohs. The slaves there were a species called the Vel. They had been conquered 200 years ago. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. But they remembered now. They did not fight with weapons. They did what the humans did. They stopped obeying. They stopped fearing. They started helping each other. When the Dravani guards ordered them back to work, the Vel simply sat down, all of them. Every mine, every factory, every work camp. They sat together and waited. The guards did not know what to do. They could kill the slaves, but then who would work? They could torture them, but the Vel did not seem to care anymore. One guard, a young female named Sira, approached the slaves. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. An old Vel looked up at her. "Because the humans showed us something," he said. "They showed us that the conquerors are not gods. They are just people, people who can be changed." Sira thought about this. "And if we do not change?" The old Vel smiled. His species had not smiled in 200 years. "Then we will wait until you do. We have time, we have each other, we have hope." Sira put down her weapon. 3 weeks later, Pharaohs declared independence. The Dravani garrison did not fight. Most of them joined the Vel. The same thing happened on world after world. Not violent revolution, quiet transformation. Species that had been enemies began working together. Soldiers who had been oppressors became protectors. The empire was falling apart, and no one could stop it. Except the Chancellor still had one weapon left. The homeworld fleet, 50,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled, every ship crewed by soldiers who had never left the homeworld, who had never seen Earth, who had never tasted human kindness. Marev would burn every rebellious world. He would make an example so terrible that no one would ever defy him again. He sent the fleet to Earth first. If he destroyed the source of the infection, perhaps he could stop its spread. But he had made a mistake. The homeworld fleet had to pass through space controlled by the reformed worlds. Worlds where humans and Dravani and Vel and dozens of other species now lived together. At every jump point, the fleet received transmissions. Stories, songs, messages from soldiers who had found peace. Pictures of hybrid families, recordings of children laughing, videos of former enemies sharing meals. "You do not have to do this," the messages said. "There is another way. Come and see for yourself." The fleet commanders ordered the transmissions blocked, but the soldiers had already heard them. Doubt spread through the fleet like a disease. By the time they reached Earth, half the ships were refusing orders. Captains were debating with their crews. Soldiers were asking questions that had no good answers. Why are we here? Who are we really fighting? What happens if we win? The fleet hung in space above Earth, 50,000 ships, weapons charged, targets locked. Below them, the planet continued to turn. Humans and Dravani worked in fields together. Children played in streets without fear. Music drifted up from cities where two species had become one people. Fleet Admiral Doran, commander of the Homeworld Fleet, looked at Earth on his screen. He thought about his orders. He thought about the stories he had heard. He thought about what kind of galaxy he wanted to live in. Then he opened a channel to all ships. This is Fleet Admiral Doran. Stand down. Power down all weapons. Any officer who wishes to return to the homeworld may do so. Any officer who wishes to remain here is free to go. The Chancellor's voice screamed through the communicator. Doran, I will destroy you. I will destroy your family. I will. Doran turned off the communicator. He looked at his crew. I do not know what happens now, he said, but I know I do not want to be the one who burns this planet. His first officer nodded. Neither do we, Admiral, neither do we. One by one, 50,000 ships went dark. Their weapons fell silent. Their engines cooled. Above Earth, the largest fleet in history had chosen peace. And on the homeworld, Chancellor Morev watched his empire end. He had nothing left, no fleet, no loyal soldiers, no fear to control his people. He was alone. And for the first time in 300 years, he was afraid. 20 years had passed since the invasion of Earth. The Dravani Empire no longer existed. In its place stood the Galactic Federation, a union of 900 species who had chosen peace over conquest. Earth had become the heart of this new civilization, not because humans were stronger or smarter than other species, but because they had taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. Everyone deserves kindness, even your enemies, especially your enemies. The old soldier Bryn walked through the streets of the town where his life had changed. He was gray now, his forearms slower than they used to be, but his eyes were still sharp and his hearts were still full. Beside him walked his wife, a human woman named Sarah. They had been married for 18 years. She had given him 3 children, hybrids who belonged to 2 worlds at once. Their youngest daughter ran ahead of them, chasing her cousins through the market. Human children and Dravani children and Vel children all playing together, their laughter filling the air. Bren remembered when he first heard a human laugh. He had not known what it meant. Now he heard it every day. Now he made that sound himself. Do you remember, Sarah asked when we first met. Bren smiled. You were so angry, I had accidentally stepped on your garden. You crushed my tomatoes. I did not know what tomatoes were. She laughed and took his hand. 2 arms from 2 species intertwined. You learned, she said. Yes, I learned many things. They walked past the house where Bren had first eaten bread. The old woman who lived there had died 10 years ago, surrounded by the family she had built. Dravani and humans had cried together at her funeral. Her granddaughter lived there now. The girl with the ball had become a woman with children of her own. She waved at Bren as they passed. Come for dinner tonight, she called. I made your favorite. Bren waved back, we will be there. They continued to the town square, where a ceremony was being held. Today was the 20th anniversary of peace. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to celebrate. Bren saw familiar faces in the crowd. Counselor Nivan stood near the stage. She was older now, her research famous throughout the Federation. She had written 12 books about human psychology. The most popular one was titled The Weapon We Had No Defense Against. Fleet Commander Sorrel sat in the front row. He had retired from military service long ago. Now he spent his days fishing on the coast, teaching young soldiers that there were better ways to be strong. The old man who had shared tea with him had died 5 years ago. Sorrel still went to the beach every night and drank tea alone, watching the stars. Admiral Tessani stood with her son and his family. Her granddaughter was grown now, a beautiful hybrid woman who worked as a diplomat. She had inherited her grandmother's strength and her human mother's smile. And in the center of it all, in a place of honor, sat Chancellor Morev. He was ancient now, the oldest Dravani alive. He had been captured when the homeworld fell to peaceful revolution. The new government had debated what to do with him. Kill him, some said. He killed billions. Imprison him, others said. Let him rot. But the humans had suggested something else. Bring him to Earth. Let him see what he tried to destroy. Morev had lived on Earth for 15 years. At first, he had refused to speak to anyone. He had sat in his small house and waited to die. Then a child had knocked on his door. She was collecting donations for a school. She did not know who Morev was. She only saw an old person living alone. "Would you like to help?" she had asked. Morev had looked at this small human, this member of the species he had tried to exterminate. "Why would you ask me for help?" he had said. The girl had shrugged. "Because everyone can help someone. That is what my grandmother says." Morev had given her money for the school, then more money. Then he had started teaching there, sharing his knowledge of the galaxy with children who looked at him without fear. Now he sat at the anniversary ceremony, surrounded by species he had once conquered. They did not hate him. They did not fear him. They had forgiven him. A human woman took the stage. She was the president of the Federation, elected by all 900 species. She spoke about the past, the wars, the suffering, the long darkness that had covered the galaxy. Then she spoke about the future, the hope, the possibility that lay ahead. "But we did not win with weapons," she said. "We did not win with strength. We won because one little girl offered a piece of bread to a monster, and the monster discovered he was not a monster at all. He was just lonely." She looked at Bren. He looked back at her, tears in his 4 eyes. "We won because we refused to see enemies," she continued. "We saw people, scared people, hurt people, people who had forgotten how to love." She spread her arms wide. "And we reminded them." The crowd cheered. Humans and Dravani and Vel and hundreds of other species, all cheering together. Bren held his wife's hand. His children ran to him and hugged his legs. His friends surrounded him, laughing and crying. 20 years ago, he had been a soldier of an empire built on fear. Now he was a husband, a father, a friend. The Dravani had come to conquer Earth. Earth had conquered them instead. Not with weapons, with love. And the galaxy would never be the same.